was Brittany who had been driven out of the sisterhood. Dustin frowned when he saw Brittany. "Why are you here? Haven't you been kicked out of the sisterhood? If Nikki can be reaccepted, then so can I. How's that? Do you like the surprise?" Brittany taunted as she crossed her arms. Dustin could plan all he wanted but could not go against Edith's word. "I need a reasonable explanation." Dustin looked at Letitia. "Young man, I must admit that you have cured Edith of her injuries, but we've paid you $50 billion as compensation. I think that's more than enough. You should be appreciative," Letitia said calmly. She looked poised and showed no signs of remorse. "Money is one thing, but this is an entirely different matter. Since you promised me, then you should have kept it. The Jade Maiden Sisterhood is a decent guild. Are you going back on your word?" Dustin asked frostily. "So what if we go back on our word? You have no place meddling in affairs of the sisterhood." Brittany huffed. "That's right. We will do as we please. It has nothing to do with you." The sisterhood disciples clamored. They appeared so overbearing and had completely no respect for Dustin. "I never expected the Jade Maiden Sisterhood to be like this. Inconsistent, no credibility, and shameless." Dustin mocked. "Young man, you better watch your words." Letitia was angered. She felt humiliated to be disgraced in front of so many people. "Fine, I won't waste any more words on you. If you choose to be like this, that's on you. But I demand an apology for beating up my men," Dustin said impassively. He had been so kind to save Edith, but in the end, the disciples of the Jade Maiden Sisterhood repaid his kindness by breaking his men's legs. He would not accept that without a fight. An apology? How? Who do you think you are? How dare you demand an apology from the Jade Maiden Sisterhood? Edith slowly walked out from the infirmary. She looked better than before. The color had returned to her cheeks, and she looked much more energetic, carrying herself like a queen. She looked at Dustin arrogantly. "Madam Parker, your lead disciple is unbelievably arrogant. Do we not deserve an apology from her for hurting my men?" Dustin squinted his eyes. "Brittany must have her reasons for beating them up," Edith said, unfazed. "Besides, even if she did not have a legitimate reason, so what? Those men are just some low lives. So what if she beat them up? What's the big deal?" "What?" Dustin frowned. "Madam Parker, aren't you being unreasonable?" He thought that Edith would try to smooth things over in a nice manner or apologize. But not only did she not yield, she even continued her arrogant and self-righteous attitude. She even went so far as to pin the blame on the victims. Unreasonable. Edith huffed. "What I say goes. We have been merciful to have just beaten them up. You won't be able to do anything if we'd killed them all." "That's right. It's their honor to have been beaten up by me. Even if I'd killed them, they would have deserved it." Brittany lifted her chin proudly. Edith was unreasonable, while Brittany was arrogant. They were made for each other. "I finally understand why the Jade Maiden disciples are so shameless. They have a rotten leader who sets a horrible example for them. You're all a bunch of heartless bastards." Dustin's gaze became freezingly cold. "How dare you? Insolent bastard." The disciples of the Jade Maiden Sisterhood were livid when they heard Dustin's words. All of them were filled with righteous indignation, as a killing intent fired up within each of them. They had never been so embarrassed like this before. This was the same as disgracing the entire sisterhood. "You brat! Do you have a death wish?" A murderous glint flashed in Edith's eyes. "We don't know who has a death wish yet. If you annoy me any further, none of you will leave this place in one piece," Dustin declared coldly. "You impudent scoundrel! Take him down!" Edith shouted. Wait, Nikki came running out and stood between Dustin and Edith. "Can we please sit down and talk things through calmly? There must be a misunderstanding. Please don't fight. Get lost. This is none of your business." Edith glared at her fiercely. "Madam Edith, Dustin saved your life today. You can't repay his kindness with revenge." Nikki was exasperated. "Shut up. You're in no place to speak here. Edith lost her cool. It was embarrassing for her to be lectured by her disciple. Madam Parker, I'm giving you a chance for Nikki's sake. Dustin demanded coldly, if you break Brittany's leg, we can all pretend that nothing happened today. Utter rubbish. Why should anyone do as you say? Who do you think you are? Brittany glared at him. Have you gone mad, brat? What makes you think that I'll take orders from you? Edith looked at him condescendingly. Why? Dustin stepped forward before confidently saying, because I have the original copy of the Jade Maiden scripture. Is that enough? The Jade Maiden scripture. The crowd was in an uproar when they heard that. They all gaped with greed in their eyes. The Jade Maiden scripture was the treasure of their guild. Anyone who could master the moves in the Jade Maiden scripture could advance at an alarming speed. Hey, brat, is that true? Edith's eyes widened, both in anticipation and in doubt. The Jade Maiden scripture she had previously gotten her hands on wasn't complete, as only half of it existed. So she ended up going to extremes when practicing the moves. She desperately needed the other half of the scripture to complete her training and ultimately reach the level of grandmother. Of course, I mean what I say. If you break her leg, I might consider letting you look at it, Dustin said. Don't listen to his nonsense, Madam Edith. He's trying to trick you. Brittany panicked. She was worried that Edith might act on the spur of the moment and break her leg. You can say anything you want, brat, but I won't believe you unless you show me the scripture. Edith's eyes narrowed. As long as you can prove to me that you have the Jade Maiden scripture, I will do as you say and break this wench's leg. You want proof? That's simple. Dustin approached one of the Jade Maiden disciples and took her sword, fastened by her waist. The sword was unsheathed, and Dustin grabbed at it. Then he performed a set of sword techniques. His moves were agile and graceful. The swordplay was fancy but lethal simultaneously. Those who watched were impressed and shocked by it. Do you recognize it yet? After demonstrating the swordplay routine, he threw the sword into the air. It landed accurately into its sheath. It's the Jade Maiden sword technique. It really is. Edith's eyes lit up, and her breathing quickened. The Jade Maiden sword technique was the ultimate move in the scripture. She had had the chance to see her teacher perform it once. It was profound and unparalleled. She had never thought that she'd be able to see it again at such a place. It proved that Dustin really had the Jade Maiden scripture. Well, I see that you've recognized it. That's great then, Dustin said frostily. Now, I want you to break her leg personally. Brittany paled at his words. For a moment, all eyes were on Brittany. The Jade Maiden scripture was important to the Jade Maiden sisterhood. But Dustin had made his condition known. He demanded that Brittany's leg be broken. And most importantly, he wanted Edith to do it personally. Nikki intended to speak for them. But Dustin cut her off by raising a hand. His gaze was fixed on Edith. What do you say, Madam Parker? Brittany is my lead disciple. I can never hurt her as her mentor, Edith said righteously. So I take it that you have no interest in the Jade Maiden scripture. Dustin raised a brow. Of course, I'm interested in it, but I do not plan to take orders from you. Edith lifted her chin and said, I will have the scripture and protect my disciple. Pass me the Jade Maiden scripture now. That is an order. If you do, I will forgive you for your rudeness earlier. Otherwise, do not be surprised if I attack you. Dustin was so angered that he failed to hold back a laugh. She had readily agreed, but she backed out on her word in the blink of an eye. She even dared to boss him around. That was a straight-up threat. She was shameless and proudly so. I must admit, I've underestimated how shameless you can be. You're on an entirely different level of shamelessness. Dustin chuckled as he shook his head. He had met his fair share of shameless people, but never one as shameless as Edith. You insolent bastard! How dare you insult Madam Edith? You've got a lot of nerve.